You've said this week that you're the Fianna Fa leader for the long road, and it has been a long road the past 8 years. The questions that Mark McSharry, John McGuinness, other people in Fianna Fa have, is it the road to more than a decade of opposition, especially if you're determined to stay there till spring of next year?
Well, the bottom line is, as far as I'm concerned, it's been an effective road insofar as the recovery and of the party and also our impact on public policy. I mean, when we came out of the 2016 general election, we had a very strong manifesto, and we put that into the Conference of Supply to get a fundamental change in budget policy, for example, to make things fairer, to get more progressive budgets than regressive budgets, to get something done in terms of treatment purchase fund and health, reduction of pupil-teacher ratios in education. It was policy-based, and it is difficult, of course. An arrangement of this kind is difficult for any political party. But I think in the modern era, my sense of where the general public are is they want some degree of maturity from politicians and from political parties, and they want political parties to put their country first.
And that's the question, that's the gamble, because you're betting that your party is going to get rewarded by the electorate for putting the country first. This is the theme you've been dealing with a lot in your speech last night. Sinn Féin are saying, look at us, we're going up in the polls because we're attacking you for giving the government a blank cheque.
I think we need to be careful of polling. I mean, I never believed they were at 13% last month, but for that matter, we're actually, if you want to go by them, we're in a much stronger position this time than we were before 2016. No, we're actually, I mean, if you look at the Sunday Business Post poll, it's the one we're talking about. 75% of the public, if you're to take it, agree with my position and the Fianna Fáil position to extend confidence in supply. And I'd also make the point, we came out with 44 seats in the last general election. We weren't in a position to form a government. We didn't get support of smaller parties at the time. So we entered into this confidence and supply arrangement. And it's only 2.5 years since that happened. I mean, this month is the third anniversary of the general election. Are people really saying we should have elections every 2 years, every 2.5 years?
No, but I'll tell you what your TDs are saying. They're saying we're sitting there in that Dáil, and they point to Jim Daly's contribution, the attack on Fianna Fáil and the confidence and supply debate. They point to James Lawless, points to his legislation. It was supposed to be prioritised under confidence and supply, still stuck. The Children's Hospital, the overrun, the budget negotiations, you weren't told. That's what's sticking in TDs and Fianna Fáil members' craws.
As I say, of course it's difficult. And certainly the National Children's Hospital, the incompetence displayed there, the breach of faith with the public, with our party that Fine Gael engaged in terms of not telling people the full story. And the Minister for Health's position was just simply incredible, that he didn't tell his own Minister for Finance in terms of the escalating costs of that hospital, or did nothing to try and reduce those costs.
And you whip your TDs to abstain. I mean, that's not doing much about it,
But I want to equally say, it is actually, accountability is what opposition is about in Dáil Éireann. That's the fundamental thing. You highlight the failings of government. You try to bring them to account in front of the Dáil and the Parliament, like we did in cervical check in the last month and a half as well. And I've been strong on that issue in identifying, again, the Minister's mistake in offering the free smear test and the damaging impact that's had on the overall cervical check programme and the delayed introduction of the new HPV test, which will be much better. And that's an important lesson we can't have ministers making decisions with no clinical basis or no medical evidential base. And that's what oppositions have to do. But we could pull down government every 6 months on an issue, Áine.
Okay, but
I think the Brexit issue did trump everything and does trump everything because of the existential threat to some sectors of our economy that a no-deal Brexit
We'll come to Brexit in a moment, but sticking with the Children's Hospital just briefly, now that the issue of Minister Harris's position is out of the way, the hospital itself, do you basically agree with Fine Gael that the only option here is to press ahead and try and control the costs as best you can, fingers crossed?
Our view is every effort should be made to get those costs down. Now, we haven't been, I don't think the full details...
But press ahead, you agree?
Well, I think 6 months ago, when they were faced with the retendering, which we've only learned now, that was a time when they should have put the pause button on. But I think what happened there was they politically invested too much in the project. They told all of the players who were building it and so on like that, this is one project that has to go ahead because we've invested so many political cash in it. I think we have to go ahead with a children's hospital, but there are clearly issues around the continuing costs of that. And I think we haven't got the full story, not just in terms of the capital cost, but the current operational budgets of the hospital and so on. It's been deeply, deeply dismaying for the public at large. They are angry about what they see happening. They're worried about projects across the country getting delayed as a result of it. And the full impact of it, one senses, isn't being felt yet.
The Taoiseach's very sore at Fianna Fáil TDs going around the country saying, here's projects being cancelled because of the overrun in the Children's Hospital. He talks about dishonesty.
Well, the people are very sore. I mean, the Taoiseach needs to get over himself. The public are sore about projects being delayed up and down the country. Not just because of the Children's Hospital.
I mean, grist to the party political mill with local and European elections in the offing. Everyone talking about a general. This is exactly what Fianna Fáil people want us to be giving out about that lot.
The problem is last year, Leo and his team went all over the country. Big, expensive presentations in university campuses about the National Development Plan. The Children's Hospital was the centrepiece of it. This is going to be the jewel in the crown of the National Development Plan. They announced all sorts of projects. I think they thought there was going to be an election in the autumn. High pressed when we move into 2019, a lot of these projects are nowhere being realised. Working groups haven't even been established. I mean, we have an event centre in Cork. The former Taoiseach and Simon Coveney dug us sod 4 years ago, before the last general election.
Would you open the government coffers in a way he hasn't managed to yet there?
Sorry?
Would you open the government coffers?
No, it's the false city.
Okay.
It's fraudulently making political claims. We're going to do this, that and the other. And people then say, well, where is the project? Many years later. That's why people are angry around the country.
The Minister for Housing will be on the programme after the break. The government's saying we're turning the corner now in housing on rebuilding Ireland is starting to deliver. Do you agree?
No, we're nowhere near turning a corner.
What should they be doing that they're not doing? Give me 2 examples.
The litmus test for most TDs on that is the people who are coming into our clinics, desperate to try and get housing. All elements of our housing policy is still failing to deliver in terms of young people affording the high price of rent in cities, young couples' inability to afford to buy a house, and thirdly, I think...
So what would you do?
Well, I think number one, I would fundamentally free up local authorities to get on with the job. There is still too much bureaucracy.
Minister says he's doing that.
He's not doing that. I mean, we pushed in the budget. We got some extension to that in terms of the limit of, there's a limit beyond which the councils can spend. Every project has to come up to the Department of the Environment, and some of them are taking 6 to 9 months to get ratified by the Department of the Environment. That's ridiculous. We're in an emergency. I think we've been looking, and it was in confidence supply in terms of utilising the credit union and creating vehicles where additional capital funding could be put into the building of housing.
It's up to you to get them to deliver on that.
We did in the budget agree, we pushed for a substantial affordable housing scheme up to 300 million to be spent to deliver 6,000 houses over the next 3 years. But we want to see delivery on that this year. And on that affordable front, there's a lot of work to be done. But it's just a sense of inertia, the lack of speed to get projects going, and the lack of delivery.
Ask the Minister about
That's
that
the real
after the
sense
break.
of it out there.
Let me ask you about another thing. You have a partnership now with the SDLP in Northern Ireland. You say you believe the voters will choose that middle ground that you think is there and not being represented in the north. In terms of your attacks on Sinn Féin, though, over the fact that Stormont is no longer in existence, how fair are you really being? Because you focus all the blame on Sinn Féin in your contributions. It was Arlene who couldn't deliver her party to the deal that she agreed with Sinn Féin. It was Arlene that walked away from the last best chance to restore Stormont.
It was Sinn Féin who collapsed it in the beginning over the renewable heat initiative. That is incontrovertible fact. It was a reckless and irresponsible move. And in my view, Sinn Féin have been at times...
there. Do you remember Arlene going into the chamber, leading her party alone?
When you have scandals in government, you deal with the scandal. You have your inquiry, and it falls where it falls. You don't collapse the entire edifice of government and parliament. Name a parliament in Europe that gets collapsed because of a scandal in a particular government department. It's more of, and I have criticised the DUP as well in terms of its behaviour, because I think the DUP and Sinn Féin ran the Northern Executive like a cartel for far too long.
That the DUP is now more interested in the power they're able to exert at Westminster.
I actually don't believe that. I think there's a strong element within the DUP that wants devolution. I look at Jeffrey Donaldson's comments recently on Brexit, which I thought was showing a hand of conciliation and a genuine attempt to say we've got to mend fences here. And I think Arlene Foster herself would much prefer the executive to be back up and running. That's my sense.
They're not able to deliver the whole party on that.
They didn't. Yeah, but the issue my fundamental criticism of Sinn Féin has been, because I was there negotiating the devolution of justice. I know how they operate. I know how they can put things together when they want to, and how cynically they can pull things down when they want to. And I was just so disillusioned that they can be so cavalier with the institutions of the Good Friday Agreement. And I think underlying a lot of Sinn Féin's approach is there's a half-heartedness to the Good Friday Agreement within Sinn Féin. Hence the Brexit and the immediate push for a border poll and let's have it now. And I think they haven't worked the institutions strongly enough.
Where's the Republican leader in you when you focus all your criticism on them predominantly and not on the DUP?
But are you suggesting that Sinn Féin is somehow the embodiment of republicanism? I mean, to me, Sinn Féin were the embodiment and personification of sectarianism for far too long. My republicanism is the Wolf Tone republicanism of uniting Catholic, Protestant and dissenter. I'd add others now because we have a much more diverse society in the north and elsewhere. And we're, like the Good Friday Agreement represented a triumph of democratic constitutional republicanism.
But the DUP and Sinn Féin have both consolidated in lots of respects their vote through that. So it's going to be a big test come May whether this middle ground that you're putting all your faith in is really going to emerge.
May is only 2 months away. This is, in terms of our partnership, that's not just about May. That's obviously a longer term partnership on ideas and policies. Because in my view, what we've, in terms of research, we've analysed what's happening in Northern Ireland. There's huge disillusionment with the political parties and with institutions.
And there are many
unlike
young
Scotland,
people
for example,
who don't understand why, for instance, it's not important that a same-sex couple would be able to marry as equally in Northern Ireland as in the South. And isn't that something that Sinn Féin is right to take a stand on?
Absolutely, but we support that as well. But if you take Tiernan Brady, for example, who's one of the leading lights in terms of marriage equality in the Republic, I think people could use his approach in terms of uniting people around marriage equality, not using marriage equality as a kind of a party political weapon to beat somebody else up with. I can recall Hillary Clinton and President Obama, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 years ago, not being great advocates of marriage equality. So I think we need to keep things in perspective as well. And I think marriage equality would happen if the Assembly came back, because I think there's a majority on the Assembly for marriage equality. But I would, and obviously the petition's a concern that, that they can utilise that sometimes to veto, but I don't think it would be used on this occasion.
Brexit, the omnibus legislation, how close are we to no deal? Because these are laws nobody ever wants to see become reality. Correct.
We don't want to see these laws becoming reality. And again, if we didn't extend confidence in supply, we wouldn't even be in a position to pass these laws in the coming weeks.
Will you be able to amend those laws, do you understand?
Yes, I think there will be, if there's need to amend them. I think a lot of them, to be fair, are underpinning the natural type of day-to-day activity that we take for granted now, north-south, and relationships in terms of medical interventions of people going abroad for treatment and so on like that, and students studying in both jurisdictions. So that is important that we legally underpin that. I think what's important is we are heading towards a no deal right now. Every effort should be made to avoid a no deal, because I think its impact would be devastating on the Irish economy and on the British economy and quite a number of the European countries as well, member states.
You've been quite critical of the Taoiseach personally for the way that he's been dealing with Brexit while you've been supporting his government. What's the nub of your criticism?
I think in terms of my one concern is the degree to which the whole approach has impacted so negatively on British-Irish relations, on North-South relationships, and indeed the degree to which it's polarised divisions within the community.
But that's not of Leo Varadkar's making, he's just reacting to events.
Yeah, but I think even some of his language and his commentary, even I couldn't get over his commentary on Saturday night at the Fine Gael Euro Convention, where he said the British Parliament isn't the mother of all parliaments. It might be the mother of all parliaments, but it's not the boss of all parliaments. And it's very childish kind of stuff that we don't need to be doing. It's getting too serious for that. It's a very serious issue. And I think there comes a stage when Britain is in trouble politically. We can see that. There is incoherence there. But what we must do is to try and work with Europe and with the British government to make sure that their leaving Europe doesn't leave everybody poorer, and that we can have a harmonious relationship.
But how do you work with chaos? I mean, we have a situation where it looks as if the meaningful vote has been pulled again next Wednesday. Nobody can figure out what Theresa May is doing, really, in the desert. Yes, the plan appears to be a codicil that they will be offered by the Council at the end of March. The question is whether Parliament would have the wit or the capability to take it.
That's a fair point, and that is one of the big questions. If something emerges from these particular talks, will Theresa May have the capacity to get that through the British Parliament? And there's a big question mark around that, because we haven't seen the detail of what actually is being proposed. And if that doesn't happen, it seems to me that an extension will be required. And I think an extension is better than a no-deal Brexit. And I don't think there's any question about that.
One big talking point at City West yesterday, of course, we saw you admiring the posters there, Billy Kelleher. In fairness, I mean, you know, Billy was with you on that long road when a lot of other people weren't and they were sniping in the background. Would you not cut him a break and let him run for Europe?
Billy was the first person to ask me to become leader of the party. So we do have a good, strong personal relationship. But I'm not stopping anybody from running for Europe. And I have
just giving interviews saying it would be a bad idea.
No, I gave an interview 2 or 3 months ago saying my preference would be if we didn't have TDs running. Billy came in to meet me after Christmas. We had spoken to Seamus McGrath
Does he have your blessing,
before Christmas. The letters have gone out now. As I said, we spoke to Seamus McGrath before Christmas. Jason Fitzgerald is in the ring, Malcolm Byrne from Wexford.
You're doing all your mentions. Does he have your blessing?
No individual candidate has my blessing because the convention process is now underway. Well, that's all. I mean, in Dublin I didn't get involved and Barry Andrews won that, a very competitive race.
Just one final question.
I think that, like, the talk about the posters and so on like that, I was a bit taken back by some political commentators kind of being surprised. It is an Ardèche, it is a political convention, and the very stuff of that is politics and campaigning, you know.
And I think Billy kind
of stole a march there with the campaign, you know.
Yeah, well, he's got plenty of publicity for himself there anyway. Just one final point, and a Fine Gael person said to me yesterday, in terms of your European lineup, and obviously that's where you're really looking to make a breakthrough in May because you presumably look to hold what you have in the locals. They said, bit male and stale. They said, we've got loads of women running. Where are your women?
Well, we may have women in Midlands Northwest yet. That isn't finally decided.
And the Constituency
Committee. Well, there are others. Anne, I believe, has put her name into the ring now as well. So that's a matter yet to be finalised in terms of the National Constituencies Committee. I think we may have max 5 candidates. We may have 4. So, you know, in terms of the renewal and growth of the party, obviously, a European election is a big election. It's a mini presidential in terms of personalities. And my general sense of you know, a European election is that you have to have a certain platform, certain profile to be electable, if you like, and have a good chance of getting elected.